the ministry, captains of industry, friends, colleagues, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. First, let me start by thanking you for being here. I'm going through a different phase of my career, which is trying to go on campaigns, and I'm learning the ropes. So I'm barely hobbling from point to point, learning as I go. But I'm glad that the permanent secretary, as always, keeps an efficient rein on the ministry and makes sure that things happen on time. Otherwise, if you left it to me, I thank you very much, and I thank all the heads of parastatals. I think today really is the day to celebrate them much more than me. Sometimes I take the limelight for all the achievements, but there are lots and lots of people who labor night and day to make sure things work well, from the group manager of NNPC, the heads of DPR, NCDMB, all the parastatals. I have had an extremely lovely working relationship with them. I've done that by letting them drive their shops and driving the policies behind them, but giving deadlines, and we all agree and work together. So it has been a harmonious working relationship, and I thank them very much for the confidence and what they've delivered over the last 2 years. I think if there's any ministry that is at least, and please, I do not forget to recognize my brother and friend and colleague, the Honourable Minister of State for Health. Please forgive me. Thank you very much for coming. He's not here not because he's just from South like myself. He's here because he's a very good friend, and he worries about the environmental issues that happen in the oil industry much more than anybody knows. So thank you very much for being here. I think if there's anything I thank them for, is the fact that the last 3 years, if there's one sector where you would need to see the challenges that this administration faced, it's certainly the oil sector. We started in a very laborious way. Oil production down to 800,000 barrels when we were here. Price of products then 95 or 98, but fuel queues literally all over the place. I say that when His Excellency appointed me as Group Managing Director of NNPC, I had come to see him that morning to the second meeting, and I was still working in my good old ExxonMobil. And when we finished our conversation, I said I was going back to Lagos. He said, no, you have to start today. And I said, well, there's something called I need to give notice. And as Vice Chairman of ExxonMobil, I needed almost 3 to 4 months notice. So, well, this is national call, you have to start today. He should have told me that fuel queue were just looming in the background. Because then I started, and a week later, the fuel queues hit me. So it was like baptism by fire. You know, and we gobbled through it, lots of quick policies, lots of quick steps, trying to understand the system, trying to deal with the issues. But clearly one of the mandates that was given then was very clear: transparency. You needed to walk back from the past. The issues of corruption that were looming all over the world had to disappear. No favoritism in terms of contracts, transparency in terms of your decisions, be very firm. And so 2 weeks later, of course, like you knew, we took the very first bold step of letting go the entire top executive of NNPC, the entire executive directors. That was a boom movement. And thereafter, actions were, quite frankly, moving with almost a military alacrity, week by week, just to stabilize the system. But that was the sort of thing we had to basically think as we ran, just to make the system survive. National reserves were absolutely down to the dirt. I think we had about 15 or 16 billion dollars as our reserve then. We needed to grow it. We weren't sure whether we could pay salaries, whether we could meet recurrent expenditures of federal government. So everything really was looking at the ministry to try and deliver results. I thank him very much that in those very difficult first months, he had absolute confidence to let one make some major policy decisions that we needed to run with to make changes in the system. And he gave one the audacity to be able to have great hope and great action. So I will continue to be very grateful to him for the opportunity. Let me also say on record that I am probably the first person that I know in history who has had, at one point, 2015/2016, the singular privilege of one serving as Group Managing Director of NNPC, Minister of State Petroleum, President of OPEC, President of Apple, President of GCF, all at the same time. And those would never have been possible but for the opportunity that he gave me to serve. But what that meant was that I was carrying both national responsibilities and very challenging global responsibilities all at the same time. Now, let's see what we've tried to do. First of all, in the upstream, we have a catalog of successes that we've made. We've grown reserves by over 600 million barrels, rising from 37.2 million barrels, from 36.18 million barrels to 37.2 million barrels. So we've grown those reserves just in 2.5 years. And the gas side, we've been able to grow gas reserves by 5 trillion cubic feet, from 199.09 trillion cubic feet to from 192 trillion cubic feet to 199.09 cubic feet of gas in 2 years. We have been able to discover so many new fields. Owowo, for example, is one of the very big fields that has come up with reserves in excess of 1.5 million barrels. We've been able to grow rigs activity. When we joined, the rig activity in the country was about 2 to 3 rigs that were operating in Nigeria at the time in 2015. As of 2017, we had about 21 rigs in operation, up from about 15 rigs in operation in 2016. And hopefully, with the big FPSOs that are beginning to look like there are possibilities in Nigeria, we expect to see a lot more rig activity in Nigeria. Crude oil activity has been sustained at a fairly large level. Like I said, we started at a point of about 800,000 barrels. We've grown it to about 2 million barrels. We should be doing more, but for the cyclical difficulties in terms of pipeline disruptions, occasional pipeline disruptions, occasional closures for purposes of maintenance. But we're averaging about 2 million barrels, and about 300 of that is roughly condensates. The Egina FPSO hopefully sailed off, hope to be commissioned. I understand they've been given a target date of 31st December. I'm knocking on wood on that one. If that happens, that's an additional 150 to 200,000 barrels addition to production. So really, by the end of January, we should have grown daily production back to the 2.2 million barrels that was always our signpost. That would be a big feat, given the difficulties we have. Now, but in addition to that, there are 30 other field works that have been approved by DPR, which have a capacity of adding about 900,000 barrels per day production. So you add that to that, we expect really that all things being equal, if we're working as hard as we should, by the end of 2019, we ought to be averaging about 2.5 million barrels production. That will be the first time in the history of this country that has been done. Now we have a couple of potential FIDs that are in the pipeline, still working the ropes. Bonga, Southwest obviously is a big one for us. We're hoping that FID will come in early first quarter next year. We have Zaba, still a few things to be dealt with, but if we succeed in completing all the processes that we need to, that's another big FID. Those two have potentials of throwing in close to 700,000 barrels of potential production into this country. So if we work hard enough, by the end of 2019, 2020, we ought to begin to see Nigerian production rise from the usual cyclical 1.8 to 2 million barrels up to between 2.5 and 3 million barrels. That really is the target that I had set in 2015 when I was appointed. So I think we need to clap for that. All that is due to the resilience of the president. In the gas area, we have done tremendous work. Gas is one area where we all say we have Nigeria as a gas territory, but nobody does anything about Nigeria being a gas territory. We just we sing it, but we don't act it. Well, this government has acted it. Gas production, quite frankly, is risen by about 1 billion cubic feet per day, rising from 7.16 billion to 8.3 billion. And the effect of that has been a 16% increase in terms of gas to power supplies, which is one of the reasons why we've seen some major improvements in the gas supply situation in the country. I'm one of those who believe that if infrastructure can be addressed in this country sufficiently, we ought to be able to power every Nigerian village. And we must set that as a basic requirement for this country if we need to move forward. To push this, we've brought out the Nigerian gas policy apart from the petroleum policy. And the gas policy, for those of you who have had time to look at it, is a very comprehensive document that sets out the parameters for growth for gas. how we meet our local needs, what sort of infrastructures are required. There's various segments of business opportunities that exist in those. That was passed by the Federal Executive Council, and that is what is driving that. We're hoping that relying on that, we'll be able to drive investments into the fertilizer, petrochemicals, methanol, and LPG area. LPG is one area where we've done some very good work. We've seen a 600% increase in LPG growth over the last 2 years, from consumption is about 420,000 metric tons, which is about 600% increase over the last 6-7 years. So that's a very major movement on gas. But in addition to that, we have really not touched. We're still in the outskirts of gas development, gas home delivery development. So one of the things we're doing is we've launched what we call an LPG penetration program, which the ministry and a setup is been put in. I think it's Petroleum Equalization Fund, if I'm not mistaken. A desk has been put in there, a division has been created, and the whole idea is to create whatever is required to drive and triple the level of gas LPG consumption in this country over the next 1 to 2 years. So it's something we're paying very grave attention. We've gone to those who produce gas cylinders, we're working with them. Anybody who has a gas cylinder, we're working with NCDMB and them to try and provide necessary financing to grow the opportunity to provide these cylinders. We're looking at gas distributors. We're looking at LPG penetration through other sources other than tankages. So that is an area we need to drive, because an area touches the average village woman very quickly, very rapidly, and requires minimal of investment for us to do that. But I continue to say that developing gas infrastructure has been the bane. We've done a few things here. I still think we're touching the outskirts. We've done the OB3 East-West interconnection pipeline. It's been awarded by NNPC. Currently work is going on there. The doubling of the Escravos to Lagos pipeline, the western axis, is also continuing. The much more structure changing investment has been the AKK pipeline. But for the first time, this 614-kilometer pipeline, which is taking gas from the south all the way to the north, Ajaokuta, Kaduna. We've ensured that it's private sector driven, not government driven, and this is almost a 3 billion investment. When completed, it will improve gas supplies to these areas by about 3,600 megawatts. So we'll move from current 10,000 that we have to 10,000 just by completion of that pipeline. So it is such a key infrastructural progress that we must pay attention to. In the area of gas flare, because of the President's concern for environmental issues, we have worked very hard to bring down this number. If you remember, in 2016, I made a commitment that we'll try and zero out gas flare by 2020, 10 years ahead of the United Nations set goal parameters of 2030. We're doing very wonderfully in that area. Flare from gas production has reduced from the numbers of 26% that we had now to about 9%. We expect to zero that out, quite frankly, by 2020. As part of this campaign, we have launched what we call the gas flare commercialization program, which is for the first time allowing third parties to get into production facilities and take advantage of capturing gas flare to turn them into refined beneficial commodities. This is the first time this is being done. And what it has done is that it has energized oil companies who hitherto were a bit resistant about this to also begin their own gas flare commercializations. And looking at sort of returns that I see from this group, it's obvious that a lot of them have now jumped in, began their own processes, coming to justify why they should be allowed to run their own process, provided they can meet the timeline. If we succeed in doing this and suddenly can say to those communities from where we produce gas that we no longer produce gas and flare it and create environmental hazards, we would have done something that nobody has been able to do in this country, and that would be wonderful. So I'm really looking forward to the government completing this process. In the midstream and downstream sectors, we have struggled. Comrade Adela just said that, and Akinla just said that, and it's absolutely correct. I would love to see a day when there will be no fuel scarcity in this country. But for that to happen, there are certain realities. Whether we want to accept the facts or not, the realities are there. The liberalization of the sector is going to be a panacea for being able to solve this. As long as we continue to subsidize products, create very market-unfriendly type taxes, you're going to continue to struggle. So we need to find a way that we meet the needs to provide products sufficiently for the populace, and at the same time be able to free the sector to grow. Investments are lacking in this sector. We've been working on trying to rebuild the 3 refineries, or 4 refineries are owned by NNPC. We got that approval from His Excellency Mr. President in 2016 January. NNPC has struggled in terms of being able to find the financials. Financials have finally been found, but now to find the terms, to agree on terms, have been difficult. But knock on wood, we're actually having a meeting on this tomorrow, and I'm hoping that hopefully by the end of this year, end of first quarter next year, we would have completed the commercial aspects of this financial undertaking, which is probably in excess of 2-point-something billion, and finally be able to allow private sector collaborate with NNPC and repair these refineries and bring back 450,000 barrel capacity refineries back into shape. That is going to be the solution, one of the first solutions to solving the fuel crisis. We're not going to trade our way out of fuel crisis by bringing sufficiency, by expanding reserves, by loading up at extravagant costs, which costs the Federation a lot of money. That is not the solution. The solution is to get the refineries to work. And that's why we've worked very hard with Dangote Refinery to make sure that we're on their back, working as if they're a government-owned refinery, they are not, they're private. But if somebody says to me, why do you spend so much time on Dangote's refinery? I say, because first, it's a Nigerian, 2, it is important for Nigeria, and 3, it helps solve my crisis. You know, now if it delivers at, in 2020, like it's projected, it will bring in 600,000 barrels capacity refining into this country. Add to that to the 400,000 from NNPC, we will be processing about 1 million barrels of refining, away from about 80,000 barrels capacity that we're doing today. Then we'll become a net exporter of refined petroleum products. We need to go back to that model. That is the model that every OPEC country is shooting for. In addition to that, we're also working with Niger Republic to do a refinery up in Katsina. That's going through the diplomatic processes. It's going to be private sector funded. We're also working with Odds-Ibe to look at a refinery in Bayelsa. As far as I'm concerned, 2 things must happen. Refineries must come to Nigeria, or become prevalent in Nigeria. We need to process a lot more of the crude that we process here. And I've served notice to oil companies who have been very complacent in enjoying the fact of producing barrels of oil and shipping them out and making money out of it, that the time will come soon when domestic obligations will exist for them to supply crude, albeit at international pricing, to these refineries. We cannot ship out crude when there are refineries needing them here for purposes of survival. So we need to, so there are certain fundamental policy dislocations that must come in place for this to happen. But it's an area where we're working hard. I spend this energy on refining because every day I open the paper and somebody says, well, he promised that if it doesn't happen in 2019 December, he will leave. Well, I mean, if leaving brings products to the Nigerian populace, gladly. But that is not the issue. The issue is that until you fund the refineries, until you build the refineries, until you find the investors and they work, you're not going to be able to solve the problem. I'm mindful of that. I'm working very hard with NNPC on that. NNPC is driving that process. I'm a policy driver. They are the mechanics of this process. But I do know that they've worked very hard on trying to find investors. We're going to continue. What is important is that for the first time, the president was able to say, I will repair the refinery without government money. And I think nobody's even giving attention to that. Everybody's saying, when will it be done? But no government, 1 penny has been spent on any refinery. So every effort we're making is to go find private investors to collaborate with us, save the country money, and then be able to put these refineries in working order. Because every time that we've done in the past, it's always come up with stories. The wrong contracting models, the wrong delivery, wrong work, and we don't want to go that model. Let the private refiners work with us, do this, and help co-manage these refineries, and let's get it to work. So let's focus on being able to deliver as opposed to focusing on my head. Anyway, let me spend a bit of time on infrastructure. I'm hoping that before the February election, we will get to a point where we will at least launch the infrastructure program for the oil sector. This is one sector that has not had a lot of support financing for infrastructure from government, even though it is the key survival ministry. So we need to do that. We need to get infrastructure rolling. There are lots of other achievements. National content, our National Content Fund working very well. The national gas parks, which are about 5 or 6 of them, already work in progress. Some being constructed right now, working very well. The national headquarters of NCDB in Bayelsa, very good storyline model, being constructed and finished almost immediately. Over 784 MSc scholarships and 567 PhD scholarships given out by at PTDF, and the National Institute of Petroleum Studies finished in Kaduna. So many achievements within the ministry. But let's not pretend that it's all been rosy. Obviously, work in OPEC going very well. Last week we finished the meeting that was very critical for our survival. We went in, and for the first time in OPEC history, we lost $30 of our pricing within a period of 1 month. And the issue was how we're going to get OPEC back. I'm glad that OPEC found it fit to have Nigeria lead the conversations. The Saudi Arabian minister came here, talked with me about heading the delegations when we get to OPEC to try and find solutions to this. And they wanted to take a back seat. We succeeded in finding a new agreement with Russia. Prices moved up that very day. I think prices have escalated back from $59 to about $65, hopefully rising to $70. So we're thankful for that. But looking ahead, critical issues we must address: removal of subsidy and how do we deal with it? Liberalization of the downstream sector, refineries revamp we must complete, increasing crude oil production to about 2.5 million barrels must be a target we must push. Domestic gas and crude supply obligations we must pursue. Transparency in FAC remittances so that there are no disputes between the Assembly, the governors and us in terms of what we made and what we sent from NNPC. That needs to be addressed. Partnering for uninterrupted power supply, working with oil companies is key. Environmental cleanups we've started in Ogoni, we need to extend to other areas. Infrastructure revamp in the sector, key. Community empowerment programs, key. There is no paucity of work in this sector. Thank you very much.